Around the world, across continents and cultures, if there's one hope shared by all humanity, it's to be helped when we are sick and hurting. But for so much of the world, hope and reality are far apart.
1.2 billion people in the world have no access to health care. That's nearly 20% of humanity.
Close to 40% of health care is provided by faith-based organizations.
One of those faith groups is an American-born religion, the Seventh-day Adventists. A conservative strand of Christianity, Adventists are grounded in the Bible, anticipate the near end of the world, and like Jews, place great importance in the Saturday Sabbath. Adventists also believe the body is the temple of God, something sacred to be cared for, and that has prompted them to build pioneering hospitals, to perform breakthrough medical procedures, and to promote a healthy lifestyle that has made them some of the longest living people on the planet, with Adventists living 7 up to 10 years longer than others. There are Adventist hospitals and clinics scattered throughout the world, the fruit of more than a century of missionary outreach to bring their religion and their health story to the far reaches of the globe.
So the Mission Hospital is the pioneer of the modern medical system in multiple countries around the world.
This is the worst flood in the documented history of the Amazon.
You do as much good as you can for as many people, but you can't save everyone.
Where to start?
We have seen medical missionaries as heroes. It's because we all need healing. We can support medicine and support healing even if we have no religious faith ourselves. It's a universal human need.
The earthquake measured 7 in magnitude. It lasted just over 30 seconds. When it ended, more than 300,000 men, women, and children were dead. 300,000 more were injured, and 1 million people, a tenth of the Haitian population, were homeless. The capital city of Port-au-Prince was chaos.
The disaster was just apocalyptic. And so getting here, roads were closed, rubble was everywhere, people were digging out their relatives from buildings. The stench of death was just acrid.
Despite being close to the epicenter of the quake, this hospital, L'Hôpital Adventiste, run by the Seventh-day Adventists, somehow managed to escape serious damage. So many of the injured made their way here. Soon, it resembled a war hospital.
A lot of people like to talk about the first responders to Haiti, how people came in 24 or 48 hours after the earthquake. Well, that may be true for foreigners, but the first responders were our staff, the people that were here during the earthquake while it happened, and that had patients showing up in the doors of the hospital within 5 minutes of the earthquake.
And at that time, we still had the tremors, the aftershocks, and that if each aftershock, people would be running out. Scared to death. This hospital was a refugee camp, literally. For each patient, you would have 2, 3, maybe 4 family members staying under the same tent.
Support began pouring in from around the world. Government, non-government organizations or NGOs, church groups, and others all made their way to Haiti. One of the first doctors to arrive in Haiti was an orthopedic surgeon, Scott Nelson, from Loma Linda, California. He was doing volunteer medical work across the border in the Dominican Republic, but he had years of experience in Haiti.
The first day, we operated on about a dozen major operations, and 2 of those patients didn't survive after surgery, and we were able to get a feel of who was going to be able to survive and who wasn't. Some of our patients actually died before they reached the operating room.
some people say that in those first few days that he operated for days straight without sleep. And after watching him, I don't doubt it. Somebody said they've even seen him sleep up against the wall standing up. It just would work tirelessly and so hard to make sure that people got seen and that things got done.
After the earthquake, I came here and I was just planning to spend 7 to 10 days taking care of these patients and realized the immense magnitude of problems, and I actually ended up spending 6 months here.
Now Scott Nelson returns to Haiti every 3 months to volunteer in this hospital, where he performs up to 40 operations in a week. For many Haitians, paying for major orthopedic surgery would be impossible. These 3 boys are orphans: Bidjori, Larry, Renau. They're orphans not because their parents died, but because the parents no longer had the means to care for them, or because of their handicaps. So they gave them to this woman who has a home for handicapped children.
They are shunned in their villages usually. They don't let them into schools. Their families don't really want them. And our goal is to give them a future, to give them corrective surgery if they need it.
Clubfoot is a deformity that the foot is turned in and bent down, and it's very difficult to walk and can become painful with time. And in the United States, we correct these at a very young age and are able to have very good results. And here, as the children get older, it becomes more difficult to correct, but we're able to use fairly sophisticated methods and still be able to get his feet nice and straight.
While I'm walking, I noticed my feet are turning. He said he felt the pain to the point he couldn't walk.
Larry is 16 and suffers from rickets, a vitamin D deficiency.
Because of that, he has what we call genu valgum, which is basically a knock knee, and a very severe rotational deformity of his leg as well, making it difficult for him to walk. And today we're going to make his leg straight. The mothers had heard about our orthopedic program here and came 3 months after the earthquake here for treatment of the club foot. And I put the cast on her, and the next week she brought 3 other mothers back with her. So second week we had 4 kids, the third week we had 8, then we went to 16 by the 4th week, and then within 2 months we had 40 kids coming here to this hospital for the treatment of the club foot.
The majority of our patients are not able to afford treatment. So we're still providing a large number of free care or reduced cost care.
With the country's unemployment upwards of 80%, the hospital must rely on support from outside Haiti, especially from other Adventist organizations. With that support and strategy, the hospital is expanding.
This will be kind of the upscale wing of the hospital, where we can take care of insurance patients. We've got a lot of the NGOs want to put in their administration, they need hospitalization. This would be the preferred hospital place to stay. And we do that, and we justify that, because then we can charge them considerably more than regular patients and use that income to subsidize the rest of the hospital operations. So it's a Robin Hood sort of scheme, but it works very well in these hospitals.
I mean, every flight I'm down here, the plane is half full of mission groups of various kinds and people coming in. How do you convert short-term Band-Aid help to long-term sustainable development? That's the challenge.
In its own way, the hospital is taking a long-term approach by expanding the orthopedic department to meet the ongoing needs, by building a new rehabilitation center and training the next generation of physical therapists, by creating a prosthetic program to help the countless number of Haitians who've lost limbs, and by partnering with other organizations to bring services beyond Port-au-Prince and into the outer-lying regions. Small steps against a tide of enormous challenges.
Where to start? That's the question. There's so much to do. Where to start? One answer can be, start where you are.
You know, the last 2 years has been a rather incredible outpouring. I must say, considerable disappointment in the governments of the world who made big financial promises that never came through, but the volunteers of the world came through.
If there can be any bright side to the earthquake tragedy, it brought the heart of the world to Haiti.
When I see their smiles It's, well, I call them $1 million miles. There's no way that you could ever get paid more than that for any operation anywhere in the world.
We hope to move Hôpital Adventiste out to be more of a network, to have clinics scattered around in other parts of the country that also provide health care at a more economical level. Typically, in most developing countries, clinics are much more sustainable and economically viable than hospitals are.
Sometimes providing even a simple clinic for people in the developing world presents enormous challenges. This is the Amazon region of Brazil, an interlocking web of hundreds of miles of black and brown deep water rivers and narrow winding tributaries that creates one of the most fabled waterways on the planet.
Here in the Amazon, the highway is the rivers. The people travel on the river. It's our only way to get in from one area to another. So everybody lives right on the bank of the river. They were raised in the river. They take their baths in the river. You come to a community, all the kids are swimming and playing. The women are all at the river's edge in the water, washing their clothes. The men are out fishing. It's their bathing, it's their water source, it's their bathroom often, it's everything to them. If you want to reach these people, if you want to be able to come to them, you have to have a boat.
And in these remote areas, most have little or no access to health care or medicine. So out of that need grew the Luzero Boat Project. Luzero, Portuguese for light bearers. It's a fleet of a dozen boats, large and small, that enables a core team and scores of volunteers to deliver basic medical services to even the most remote regions. The medical team is welcomed wherever they dock. They often arrive without notice because communications are so poor. They bring with them boxes of medicines and whatever medical equipment they can transport. They set up temporary clinics in houses, under tents, or inside the village school. They stay only a day or two, yet during that time, they're able to treat hundreds of patients who otherwise would have no access to medical care. And they offer instructions on good health and nutrition.
It's amazing, it's wonderful, but it's tough because, you know, you are in contact with nature, but you have a lot of things that you have to deal. You know, you have crocodiles, you have snakes, you have piranhas. Sometimes travel all night to the other village because they are waiting for us, so we cannot stop.
The Luzero Project began in the 1930s when two Adventist medical missionaries, Leo and Jesse Halliwell, left America and came to the Amazon. Leo was an engineer, the boat captain, with some medical training. His wife Jessie was a nurse. Together they traveled the rivers offering medical care. They stayed in the jungle for nearly 40 years.
When we say Luzero, sometimes people, oh, I have 70 years, but I was, 10 years when Leo Halliwell, or my father, or my mother, or my grandmother, or my grandmother. So people know all this job that he did.
The Halliwell story is very special to me because my grandpa became a missionary because of hearing the story of Leo Halliwell.
Today, the Boat Project is a partnership between ADRA, the Adventist Development and Relief Agency, and Amazon Lifesavers, a nonprofit headed by two young Adventist medical missionaries, Brad Mills and his wife, Lena.
I'm a third-generation missionary. My grandpa was a pilot and a nurse. My grandma was a nurse. My parents were nurses. And so I fit right in line. I grew up in the jungle. They grew up in the jungle. And so I decided to do nursing, do the same thing that they did.
Brad and Lena are working and raising their family near Manaus, Brazil. Manaus is a city of nearly 2 million people and the gateway to the Amazon. This hospital in Manaus is less than 20 miles from the jungle. Yet it has state-of-the-art equipment and a staff of skilled technicians. A number of them volunteer for the boat project.
I'm a radiologist. I deal with MRI and CT. Many people told me about these stories here in the Amazon with the missionaries came and the jungle and the indigenous people, and this was fascinating for me. But there is a huge difference between the capital and the villages. There are no medicine, no dental or medical assistance, and that's a complete different world.
And this year's historic rains have made the delivery of medical care even more difficult.
So this is the worst flood in the documented history of the Amazon, leaving over 80% of the municipalities, the cities in the interior, underwater. You know, houses are underwater, churches underwater. The hospitals in a lot of cities are underwater, schools are underwater. If there is a well, it's now underwater. Who lives inside of the cities, so to say, which are the populated areas of the jungle? It's even worse.
Some people would have to travel 20 to 30 hours to reach the next medical services, and sometimes wait 2 or 3 days.
They probably have never brushed their teeth, maybe a couple times in their lives. Many of these villages haven't been visited by dentists for years. We need more full-time volunteers who are willing to stay and do a more thorough work. What happens is if you go into a village and there's tons of people in pain and you want to help the most people that you can, then you end up doing what's quicker, which is the extractions. Of course, if you did a filling, you do just a couple. And so people are suffering in pain, so you try to alleviate that pain.
Told him that he has suffering for 1 month of this pain on his tooth. It hurt a little bit, with the dentist, but now he's feeling better. Now he's released from the pain.
Aí, assim, eu tento trabalhar com eles, já fui em escolas, já tentei conscientizar os adultos, só que às vezes é mais difícil tentar conscientizar os adultos do que as crianças. Então eu mudei o trabalho para tentar fazer com que as crianças entendessem a importância da escovação, para que as crianças tentassem, para que elas continuassem conscientizando os adultos, a família delas. Aí eu tento trabalhar tanto com os adultos quanto com as crianças, mas eu vi que com as crianças dá mais resultado, então eu uso mais as crianças.
We have this idea that, we're going to go in and we're going to, change the population. We're going to give one health lecture and the people are going to leave and change their customs and their habits. And from working in primary care in the U.S., I tell you, it's the same. People don't like change. People don't like change.
This is Odilene. She is 16 years old, and there is the suspect of an early pregnancy. You're going to check it in the ultrasound now.
There's a lot of unpredictables when we go into the jungle and do things. We don't have a way to call them and say, hey, we're going to be here. I came to a village once on a Sunday morning. It was early, and the whole village was drunk. The whole village on a Sunday morning. They had a Saturday night feast. There was beer bottles how do you even get this much beer out in the middle of the jungle? But when they saw that it was a medical boat, they got the whole village up. An hour later we came up, it was a totally different village. Everyone had cleaned up, no beer bottles anywhere, and they were all waiting to be seen by the medical group.
So she's really pregnant. It's 11 weeks baby.
This is her first pregnancy. She's 16 years old, and so I talked to her a little bit about the importance of her diet, being pregnant and what she needs to eat as far as fruits and vegetables. And she said, I don't like fruits and vegetables. And so, well, you're going to be a mother now, and so your kid's not going to like them, and they're going to look at you, and if you don't eat them, they're not going to eat them too. And that's true. So she's thinking about things that she needs to start changing in her own life to be a mother.
We love this environment, the culture, and the values that they've learned here so much that I would be happy just staying here the rest of my life.
The people, they feel so grateful that you're willing to come to them. They know that it's not close for you to get to them. It's not easy. To go home at night and think, man, I really could make a difference in somebody's life. It's very rewarding.
So the story of faith-based involvement with health is as old as religion.
Ted Karff has been the coordinator for the World Health Organization's efforts with faith-based health care around the world.
The first hospice in the world was created by the Buddhists because the Buddha had taught that it was a transformative act. It would renew a soul to attend to the dying. In Islamic medicine, already by the year 1000, treating people and caring for people becomes a good act, necessary for the upbuilding of a community.
In the early church, people who were sick knew that they could go to the local church, the Christian community, to seek help, to care for them, to find medicine for them, to look after their family. And over the centuries, that developed into a practice where churches would have large porches in front of the church building, and the sick would come and lay there, sometimes for days or weeks or months, because they were given hospitality, they were welcomed. Eventually that hospitality becomes hospitals.
Around 1900, 1/3 of medical missionaries were women from the United States. The reason women got so heavily involved in medical missions is because of the oppression of women worldwide. Women medical doctors believe that if you showed the worth of the female body to people, people in other cultures would start treating women better and appreciating women more.
We mothers, we are all HIV positive, and our greatest fear is that our babies will also be infected.
This is a medical clinic in Malawi, East Africa. Malawi is one of the poorest countries in Africa, with many people earning less than $1 a day. The clinic is hours from a major city, and it's organized by one of Malawi's oldest hospitals, Malamulo Hospital. Opened in 1902, Malamulo was one of the first mission hospitals of the Adventist Church. In the early years, the focus was on leprosy, which was rampant throughout much of Africa. Later, the concern was river blindness. Today, both are all but eradicated, and much of the hospital's work is centered on HIV/AIDS. Dr. Christy Shank is a medical missionary at Malamulo.
75 to 80% of all of our admissions on the medical ward are HIV positive. Many of those did not know about it prior to coming in for care. We know from studies elsewhere in the world that if you do nothing for an HIV positive mother who has a normal vaginal delivery, the transmission rate to the child between the delivery and the period of time when they're breastfeeding, about 30% of those babies will become positive if you do nothing. If you intervene by giving medication to the mother prior to the delivery and during the breastfeeding time, you actually can drop that to less than 1%.
Mary Panula is a nurse from Malamulo who heads the HIV/AIDS program, working with infected mothers and their children.
In 2003, the number of HIV rate, it was almost around 50%. But now I can say it's 99% HIV negative to the children who are born to HIV positive mothers, because there's a proper counseling to the mothers and also for the drugs we are having from the government.
To educate the people, the organizers use both song and drama to share the story of HIV/AIDS and to convey the importance of prevention and care.
Trying to find a way of integrating healthcare into culture, because culture is a very real part, and you don't want to get rid of the culture. What you want to do is you want to make sure that some of the healthcare practices that are introduced helps to complement the culture in a way that produces healthy lives.
I was the one who infected my wife.
I had sex with a prostitute in a village and didn't use protection. When I came home, I had sex with my wife. Later, my wife was tested at the health center. They found she was pregnant and HIV positive.
My daughter is HIV positive today because when I became infected, I did not follow the program. That is something I will always regret.
As in many developing countries, the government here struggles to provide health care to its people. With financial support from the outside world, including the United States, it often turns to faith-based communities to help administer programs on the grassroots level and to serve the more rural areas.
We saw at WHO that as few as 30% in some countries and as much as 40% of the health services were offered by faith-based organizations.
Currently, I believe the Malawi government spends about $4.25 per person per year on health care in this country. The subsidies that come from outside countries or from donor nations are the ones that can only sustain that.
Here, the doctor-to-patient ratio in Malawi is one of the worst in the world. So there are 50,000 patients to every one licensed physician. By comparison, the U.S. is about 1 to 270.
But it's not only doctors. There's a need for medical personnel of all kinds. So adjacent to the hospital is the Malamulo College of Medical Sciences, where students are prepared to be nurses, lab technicians, clinical officers, and midwives. It's the only school of its kind in the region.
My goal is to become a qualified biomedical scientist so that I can help people in different situations like malaria. That's the disease that's killing, I would say, a lot of children. The common disease that we know, HIV and AIDS.
There's good evidence that shows that if you want to change the health outcomes in a country, you have to educate young women. Right now, our education system within Malawi, only about 25% of the girls who start secondary school actually finish.
If you instill within the peoples of any nation not only the tools that you need to develop their intellect, but also a sense of humanity and responsibility to their fellow man, you have done a lot. You have truly educated them.
Dr. Ben Carson is a pediatric neurosurgeon at Johns Hopkins Children's Center in Baltimore. He gained international acclaim in 1987 when he separated Siamese twins, making him one of the most celebrated surgeons of our time. And in 2012, a new medical school was opened in Nigeria, bearing his name.
You know, health and healthcare is extraordinarily important to Adventists because we take very seriously, you know, the verse in the Bible that says your body is the temple of God and you're supposed to take care of it, and you have personal responsibility.
Well, when I was a kid in the 1950s and 60s, Albert Schweitzer and Tom Dooley were seen as big heroes. We read about them in our weekly reader. You know, Albert Schweitzer as the great organist and theologian and scientist who spent his whole life in the jungle, and then Tom Dooley as anti-communist crusader in Southeast Asia. These were our public American heroes.
For Jews, Henrietta Zold is remembered for creating Hadassah and changing healthcare in Israel. For Baptists, Annie Armstrong and Lottie Moon are remembered as medical missionary heroes. For Adventists, it's Harry Miller, who left America in 1903 as a young surgeon, and decades later came to be known as the China Doctor.
China was a great mass of humanity. Everywhere we went, they had never seen a foreign face before.
The American missionaries made a huge difference in China early on because they were bringing medicines and ways of treatment that were very different from what Chinese traditional medicine offered the people.
The causes of death there were largely due to malnutrition, not having adequate food for babies and growing children to use.
Now, what Harry Miller also recognized was that in China, people were not dying of some of the chronic diseases that were already beginning in America. And so he thought there must be something really good about the Chinese diet with soybeans as a perfect protein.
So I later on developed a milk made from the soybean.
The milk was tasty enough that children drank it, and nutritious enough that it's credited with saving the lives of thousands of children. Harry Miller remained in mainland China until 1949, when the revolution forced him to leave for Taiwan. There he would be awarded the Blue Star by Chiang Kai-shek. Over 4 decades as a medical missionary in Asia, Harry Miller began 17 hospitals and left a legacy that is still remembered today.
What is challenging for the Adventists, and I'm watching this very carefully, is that I see a kind of new way of thinking, almost an international health system. And this will be the first. That's why I'm so curious about how they do it. They're beginning to think strategically about the institutions they partner with worldwide and how they're creating this, what I really think is an international health service system.
One of the unique examples of that partnership is in Hangzhou, China. Hangzhou is famous as the last stop on the Silk Road. Today, it's home to a groundbreaking hospital named for the media mogul, Sir Run Shaw.
Sir Run Shaw's mother was cared for by Harry Miller, and Sir Run Shaw believed that that was very important. So when the time came that he wanted to give money for a hospital in his home province, he insisted that we at Loma Linda, because we represented Adventist healthcare, be involved in the leadership.
So despite the possible tension with a facility in a communist state partnering with a medical center aligned with a conservative Christian religion, in the 1990s, the partnership began. And in 2007, Sir Run Shaw reached a major milestone when it became the first public hospital in China to be accredited by the Joint Commission International.
It's to be a Chinese hospital, but it's to be based on scientific evidence. So it's a combination of Chinese tradition, even incorporating Chinese medicine, but in a context of the best scientific medicine.
Majority service in our hospital is Western medicine, and we do serve the patients in traditional Chinese medicine. And sometimes the patients themselves like and they trust the TCM.
TCM, traditional Chinese medicine, employs a number of ancient practices, including acupuncture, cupping, and the use of herbs.
I am a TCM doctor, and we are different from the Western doctor. I use advanced technology from the West. I also use traditional Chinese medicine. You look at the patient, you smell them, you touch them. I use different herbs to treat patients, and then we use a Western advanced technology to confirm the herbs are effective for the patients. There is no replacement for Western medicine, but it can work together with TCM for the best result.
We think that it's been easier in some ways to have that collaboration with people in China because of a tradition that already exists here of having whole person care.
Another approach common to both Adventists and the Chinese is the emphasis on prevention.
As China in this area has become more affluent and children have learned about McDonald's and Kentucky Fried and Pizza Hut, everybody is putting on a little more weight. There's also many less bicycles now than 20 years ago.
2004, we have a discussion about the hospital service. You know, before that, all the physicians did not thinking the health promotion and the lifestyle is a job, is a responsibility as a physician. Nowadays, most of them accepted that kind of concept.
Part of overall health prevention is good dental hygiene, and Sir Run Run Shaw is impacting the way the Chinese provide dental care.
This is the first one dental hygiene program in China. And usually Chinese patients be cleaned the teeth by the doctors. But doctors usually don't have so much time to have a teeth cleaning or do the surgery.
Trust of the sort that's needed for this kind of collaboration doesn't happen in a week or two or a month or two. And in fact, I think here it probably takes decades, and we've been willing to invest in that. And why? Because our goal is to elevate health outcomes around the world. Now, for us, the motivation may be different from what it is for other people, but our motivation stems from faith. Neither society can afford the epidemic of bad health that is headed our way through bad diet, through other bad practices that people have that make them unhealthy. If we have to try to fix all of that afterwards with high-tech medicine, we'll all go broke together.
Caring for the whole person, body, mind, and spirit, was a core belief of Ellen White, whose early voice and visions played a key role in the founding of the Seventh-day Adventist Church. And it was she who encouraged early missionaries to take the church's health message to the far reaches of the earth.
It was thought if we can help people to live better lives, they will be more open to what we have to say. Now, this can be taken to such an extreme that it seems manipulative. But over time, I believe we came to realize it has value to heal people, whether or not they become Adventist.
By the 1880s, Adventists were a very small group, but they start growing rapidly in numbers through the 1870s, 80s, and 90s. That's the very moment at which North Americans became passionately interested in missions. Medical missions became one of the defining part of their identity.
We always used to say the missionary went there, he went on a boat for 6 weeks, then he got on a train, he went for the train, then he got on a local bus, and then he got on his bicycle. And when he'd gone as far as he possibly could, then he set up a mission hospital.
In the 1920s, the idea of going as far as one could brought Fernando and Ana Stahl to the Andes of Peru. They came to serve the people who live in the region around Lake Titicaca. At 12,500 feet, the highest lake in the world.
Fernando Stahl y Ana Stahl eran enfermeros. Realmente tienen que haber tenido un corazón muy dispuesto a poder servir en las misiones. Perú era en ese tiempo una región de mucha desigualdad social.
Nearly a century later, the hospital, Clínica Americana, in the commercial center of Juliaca, continues to serve the people of the region. It's called a clinic because in Peru, only government facilities are allowed to be called hospitals. Americana for those first missionaries. Dr. Norca Wamalis is the director.
Juliaca es un lugar donde la gente en las fiestas, en las celebraciones, consume mucho alcohol. Y a consecuencia de eso es una ciudad donde hay una alta proporción de accidentes. Entonces, la mayor cantidad de pacientes que nosotros recibimos son pacientes politraumatizados. Hay también pacientes producto de infecciones, sobre todo en las épocas de mucho frío. Hay neumonías, bronconeumonías, que a veces aumenta la mortalidad de los niños más pequeños. La gente que tiene dinero y la gente que no tiene dinero luce casi igual físicamente. Y es muy difícil poder saber quién tiene y quién realmente no tiene, porque cuando uno pregunta, ninguno tiene, todos tienen poco. Aquí existe la cultura de rebájame, no tengo mucho dinero, o no tengo, entonces a veces es muy difícil poder discriminar quién tiene y quién no tiene.
That original spirit of missionary service is still here, as the staff, including management, receive missionary salaries, a pay scale lower than at government facilities. But one of the advantages of being part of the worldwide Adventist system is the training. Florida Hospital, one of the largest hospitals in the world, sends personnel regularly to update the Juliaca staff on medical advances. And Clinica Americana, in turn, provides practical training for nurses. These students are part of the nursing program at the local Adventist university.
Bien, son 140 alumnos de enfermería aproximadamente, ¿no? Son distribuidos en los diferentes laboratorios de acuerdo a la especialidad que están llevando.
La más importante, yo creo, es que el alumno no vea al paciente como un cliente nada más, ¿no? Sino que lo vea como una persona.
I study nursing because I like to care the people, and this career is service, only service.
To the north, outside Lima, a very different program is beginning. It's the first Adventist medical school in South America for the training of Peru's next generation of doctors.
In the U.S., most medical students are in their 20s, sometimes the early 30s. These students are in their late teens. So you have the opportunity to really have an effect in their personal formation.
La idea es tener estudiantes de todo el mundo. En estos primeros años, el requisito es que antes de ingresar al tercer año, ellos tengan el dominio en el nivel avanzado del idioma inglés.
And at the end of this year, people from the government are going to come to our campus to learn more about our lifestyle and what the principles are. So we will have the greatest opportunity to help them improve the health in all Peruvians.
Peru, like so many countries in the developing world, is seeing rapid growth in the major cities. More than 8 million people now call Lima home, and that growth is pushing the limits of health facilities, including Good Hope Clinic, which now receives upwards of 250,000 patients a year.
Most private hospitals are growing fast because there's now so many people going into private hospitals because they want to see a doctor that can see them within a few days. They can see them tomorrow, and they don't want to wait for 6 months to see a doctor now.
Good Hope is in Miraflores, one of the more affluent areas of Lima. But it also has its share of poor, so again, one helps support the other.
En la clínica Good Hope siempre está abierta a toda persona que acude a sus servicios. Nuestra misión es servir a los que más necesitan.
To meet the growing need, the hospital is expanding. A new building with 100 beds, 10 surgery rooms, and one other uniquely Adventist feature.
Es el nuevo restaurante y estamos en el área donde van a comer comida vegetariana los trabajadores y también clientes externos. Vamos a presenciar el área del público en general, donde vamos a participar de una alimentación muy sana y además vamos a tener vista espectacular, agradable para nuestros ojos también. Nosotros brindamos alimentación vegetariana y vamos a reemplazar las carnes, no hay pescado aquí, por alimentos, proteínas vegetales. Estamos hablando de las legumbres, frutos oleaginosos y estamos resaltando las bondades de las frutas y las verduras que tienen muchos antioxidantes y vitaminas. La carne de soya, tenemos la carne de soya, la molida, más conocida por el color que presenta, carne de soya tipo pollo.
A first-class restaurant in a hospital that expects to feed patients, family members, and attract a significant number of outside visitors. The restaurant will feature a vegetarian diet, a diet many Adventists believe is a key component for a longer and healthier life.
Adventists are a people who regard the body as a sacred creation. And as soon as you make that commitment. You think to yourself, the body should be taken care of. The body should be preserved as long as we can do it. People who suffer injury should receive from their fellow human beings the kind of assistance they need to get back to themselves.
And sometimes that assistance only comes through an act of kindness. Julio Santana is a government-run hospital in the Dominican Republic, not far from the border with Haiti, in the town of Tamayo. It's a sleepy little hospital that barely performs 7 operations in a week. But this week promises to be very different. Each year, a medical team, many from the Dayton, Ohio area, volunteer for a medical mission trip to a developing country. A project that started in 2004 with only 6 people, today has more than 50.
What we mean when we say we're going on a mission trip, we are going to do something for someone else.
Dr. Steve Schmidt heads the team of volunteers that will take over this facility for the week at the hospital's invitation and perform operations and procedures that otherwise would be unimaginable. Hernias, cleft palates, birth defects,
So really the only thing that we're going to
deformed hands and feet, severe burns.
I don't think there's ever been a medical mission group that's come to this town, and I'm not sure that anybody's coming again soon. And so they look at us, oh, here you are, you're our ticket.
Only so many people can be treated in a week, so life-changing decisions have to be made on the first day.
Can you tell her just
Priority is given to helping as many people as possible, with special attention to younger patients and those with problems that affect their ability to work. Choosing one and not another is never easy.
Where she burned and healed, and it was. You can't unburn somebody. It's not pretty, but I don't think anything is going to improve with surgery.
When we first see these patients and we screen them, we look at their problems and we evaluate what needs to be done. And then part of that decision making and picking the operation that we want to do is how simple is it? Is it going to need minimal follow-up, because there's not much follow-up here.
They think that since we're from the States that we have magic, and we don't. There's a lot of things we know, there's a lot of things we can do, but it's not magic.
Months before each trip, Dr. Schmidt gathers a team of doctors, nurses, medical specialists, and support staff back in Dayton, Ohio. Many work for the Kettering Medical Network, an Adventist hospital system in Greater Dayton. Schmidt's organization is known as Legacy of Healing.
You know that we have certain mission essential people that make this thing go, and you also know that I'm not one of them. You know who makes all of this happen, and that's Mom. We all know that.
It's a family legacy because my father was the missionary that inspired our kids to do mission service. He would tell us stories about his trips and about his experiences, and the kids were just odd.
But there are some people that go with us and aren't necessarily religious or Christian. They just want to do something good.
And before each trip, Schmidt, often with his brother Gary and their mother, visit medical storage houses to gather donated supplies and equipment.
I'm going to say we probably get 70% of our consumable supplies from that Kettering warehouse.
Each trip, Legacy spends thousands of dollars to ship equipment and supplies. Sometimes the greatest resistance comes from local governments whose people they're trying to help. This shipment was held up for days in customs until certain fees could be negotiated.
And I have worked some in other government institutions, and it's so difficult because when we used to go, it was in Guatemala, to a government institution, and we would come there and bring all our things and all of our people volunteering their time. You would have thought that the individuals in that hospital would be welcoming us with open arms, but they didn't. They didn't really care if we were there or not. And we would think, well, wait a minute, we're going to be helping your people. They just don't see it that way. There'll just be more people for them to take care of.
Beyond the negotiations, the details, and the logistics, This week is all about the work of healing as many people as possible.
Let me see where you are. Okay. Yeah, you're good. So then when you pull it straight across, that's where you're going to go in.
That's thing a little
perfect.
On that. I didn't know that I wanted to go in the medical field before coming on my first trip, so it changed my life. And so it's been more help to me than probably I've able to help someone else.
Every time I've come, this is my 4th trip with Legacy of Healing, I get to do a little bit more, and the doctors trust me a little bit more, and so it's been really awesome this trip.
This 6-year-old boy is named Darling.
Una playa. Demasiado inteligente el niño. Todo lo hace todas sus cosas bien. Nosotros sí queremos operarlo. Porque él como que se cohíbe de que le vea las manos. Ahora que él deja que se la vea. Pero él la agachaba. Entonces decía, déjame ver las manos. Y él la agachaba. No le gustaba. Entonces ahora tenemos también la preocupación porque él ha querido cortárselo. Él coge cosas y empieza a cortarse aquí.
What we will do is we'll separate the 3 fingers. There are 3 bones approximately this long. They're all joined together at the end. So we'll separate the bones and separate the fingers so that he'll have 3 individual digits instead of just a mass of all 3 together.
We need cases that are a little more complex. We need stuff that really needs attention, that mobility is important so they can walk, or they can use their hands or their arms to work, to move.
Gabrielle Felix is a farmer and a security guard. The buckshot in his hand is from a gun accident that left him unable to work.
I'm hoping if we get the tendons moving better, the tendons I think are all stuck in there. So if we can free.
While one part of the team works in the hospital, another visits surrounding villages to set up one-day clinics. They screen patients, provide medications, extract rotten teeth, and teach the children better health habits. And this year, as a way to provide more lasting impact, they will build a new clean water system to replace the community's only source of water.
It seems that wherever we go all over the world, there are issues with parasites. We can come into a community, we can provide medications that will take care of their parasites for a period of time, but until the water source is fixed, it's going to continue to be a problem.
We will see on any given day 200 patients. We will disperse medications for all of them, and the dentist will do easily 30 cases or 40 cases.
You're supposed to do unto others as you would have them do to you, and that's kind of what we do here. If I were in their shoes and riding their motorcycle and needed something done in a poor village, I would hope somebody would come and do it for me. These are all shotgun pellets that we're taking out. Scarred his hand and his tendons don't move.
Their pain tolerance is incredible. They recover fast, they go home fast. I hate to say it, but the Americans are wanting everything fixed and perfect before they leave, and these people don't. They're okay to go home with pain.
No, yo voy a trabajar. Si se después 5 meses o 5 meses, yo no sé. ¿Cuánto lamenta? Bueno, yo voy a trabajar.
I guess one of the things that we try to bring is hope, and it is in short supply. It is almost magical when you take 52 motivated people. That's really what it is. This is about people. It's not about stuff. It's about people.
If I'm to grow as an individual, I do that best when I'm connected with service. And so I like to portray this as not something I'm doing because somebody commands me to or the Bible says I should. It's because this is the way I feel complete as an individual.
People could criticize us for saying, okay, we're spending this money and taking supplies and things to a country far away when our needs are 5 miles away. And I think that we need to do both.
Sometimes we don't understand to what degree people suffer until we live in their shoes.
the most important thing that a person has is their health. And if we can offer that to people, we've given them the greatest gift that you can possibly give someone.
I think wherever there are religious people and people of faith, there will always be the need to respond to the need that's out there. It's simply the way the religious consciousness is organized, and that in itself becomes a godly act.
To purchase a copy of The Adventists 2, call 1-800-553-7752 or order online at etvstore.org. This program was made possible by grants from South Central Nursing Homes, VersaCare, Ohio Aerospace Health Alliance, Help International, and the following.